I competed in the 70.3 in Wilmington, North Carolina last year in October of 2024. And today I'm going to go over my experience and just kind of talk about the whole entire day from start to finish, and maybe a little bit leading up to and after that as well. I'm just going to give a full rundown on the entire process. I'll kind of break down how the day went, what I did, what I wish I had done, what I would have changed, what I wish I had done differently, what I wish I had done beforehand and afterwards, and we'll just do a full breakdown on that entire process, what it was like, and just my experience specifically with that specific race. So let's get started. That race is as far as I know, I think a lot of Ironmans are actually Sunday races. The 70.3 in Wilmington, North Carolina is actually a Saturday race. So because I did this race with a group of my employees, we actually planned a separate work trip that we had to go to Wilmington for anyways. We ended up planning it on the same week, so that way we could just go ahead and be down there. We didn't have to make a special trip to go out there. I live reasonably close to Wilmington anyways. It was just a few hours to get out there, but we wanted to go ahead and make it where we're already down there earlier in the week anyways. So we ended up getting down there on Thursday morning. We got all checked in as soon as we could, which was Friday afternoon. So I believe we had some work stuff that we had to do on Thursday and Friday. I was able to start getting checked in and everything ready to roll, checked in, and my bike stuff checked in, my bag set up, all of that on Friday, just because of our schedule with work. We did the meeting on Friday, and I was able to get my bike and bag and shoes and everything checked in on a Friday. And this race specifically has two separate transitions for T1 and T2. I know a lot of races, they share a transition. This one has two separate spots. So your bike bag and your run bag are in two totally different spots. So it requires a little bit more logistics to get set up, but we got all that handled on Friday. So my family came in town on that Friday evening because my wife, my daughter, and then my mother and my father, they were all going to come out just to cheer me on and just experience the whole thing. So they came in town Friday evening, and we went out to dinner. I believe I had a great big pizza, just a bunch of carbs and grease. And the grease wasn't great, but the carbs were, so that was perfect. I had actually made some packets for them. So that Friday night, I gave them binders. I had actually printed out the courses, and then I had a ton of notes that I had put on all of these that kind of explained my estimated times, my estimated where I would be when, and just some notes on some research that I did on what I found would be the best way for them to experience the race and not just be bored the entire time. So I gave them that. We went over all the things that I found. I explained to them just kind of my thought, because this was my first triathlon ever. I'd never even done a sprint or an Olympic or anything. This was my very, very first triathlon ever. So I hardly knew what to expect myself. So I was giving them all the information that I had found, just strictly based on the research that I had done and the prep that I had done for this. So it was the blind leading the blind at this point, trying to get them to have a good time, to make sure that they were where they needed to be, when they needed to be there, when I hardly knew any of that. So I gave them that. We went through everything, just kind of explained the whole process of what I expected for tomorrow, which was race day. We ended up getting to bed, obviously fairly early, because I was going to get up extremely early. When it comes to being somewhere like this on time, I'm pretty anxious about making sure that I'm there on time. So I got up at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. I got up super, super early. It was really hard to sleep anyways. But I got up. I ate some bread that we had from the night before. We had a big loaf of bread, a big loaf of like Italian bread from the restaurant that my parents went to before they got there. So I had a big bunch of bread, and I went ahead and made my carb and electrolyte drink, and I started drinking on that. Went ahead and got all of my Vaseline and stuff on that I needed to get on. I went ahead and got my tri-suit on, and then I actually went ahead and got my wetsuit on as well, because I didn't want to have to worry about trying to find a place to get the wetsuit on, because if you're new to this, wetsuits are nearly impossible to get on. So I went ahead and made sure I went ahead and got it on. That way if I needed help, I would have it there. So we got loaded up in the car. I'd already, like I said, my bike, all my bags and everything, they were everywhere. The only thing I had was my morning items bag. So I had my my swim stuff, like my goggles, an extra jacket, some things like that, because it was cold this morning. That morning was about 40-ish degrees, 45 degrees. So I knew it was going to be really cold. So we drove to, my father and I, my dad took me, my wife and my daughter and my mother, they were still sleeping. They were going to wait to just come later. So my dad, he took me to Transition 1, which is where the bikes are at. So I went there, I put my nutrition and stuff on my bike, I put my water bottles that I had prepped in the hotel room, I put all that on my bike, which was 3 bottles of water, which we'll find out later was not enough. So we had 3 bottles of water and electrolyte and carbs. And then I had some nutrition, some goos and stuff like that, put all that on my bike, pumped my tires up, made sure all that was good, laid everything out, made sure my helmet was set, everything was good to go on the bike. And then they had big buses that were shuttling everyone from T1, where the bikes are at, to the swim start, which was over on Wrightsville Beach in North Carolina. So we take the bus over to Wrightsville Beach, and I got there, and once again, I was alone. I didn't have any of my coworkers yet at this point because I got there way too early. So I got there, by the time I got there, it was, I still had a ton of time, a couple of hours before swim start. And I was not going to be in the fastest swim group by any means. It's a rolling start, so the faster you swim, the earlier you actually jump in the water. And then as you slow down, the farther back you actually get in the water. So I knew I wasn't going to be starting right off the bat as well. I estimated myself to be in the water. The race, I think, started at 7. I didn't expect to be in the water until 7:30 to 7:45, 30 to 45 minutes after the actual start. So I went and I actually just laid down. So they had parking lots where all of the people that were racing, this was all the racers, you would go and just kind of hang out, and you could go find your spot. They had signs that were holding up for your estimated swim time, so you could go around your estimated swim time and just kind of hang out there until it was time to go across the road down towards the actual start. So I hung out there for a little while. I laid down, I put my hood up, and I just kind of tried to take a nap for a while. I knew, like I said, I had a couple of hours, so I tried to take a nap. I laid there for maybe about an hour. I got no sleep, but I at least just let my body rest. Shortly after that, the sun was just barely poking up, not enough to where it was like a sunrise yet, but it was just barely touching the sky. And I made my way over to the beach, which is on the other side. Wrightsville Beach is actually a big strip. It's a cape, I guess you could consider it. So we were actually swimming in the bay on the other side, but the beach side, which was facing the Atlantic, was on the other side of this cape. So I made my way over to the cape, to the beach on that side. And I went and I just stood on the beach for, 30 more minutes, 30 or 40 minutes, and watched the sunrise. And I just sat there on the beach, just stood there and watched the sunrise, and it was phenomenal. It calmed my nerves down. I felt really connected with the race. I just felt really, really good. I was really glad that I did that, because I spent, like I said, 30 or 40 minutes just watching the sun rise. And I wasn't the only one. There was probably 4 or 5 other people just spread out along the beach, standing there watching the sunrise. So I got to do that, and I'm really happy that I did that, because it knocked a ton of the nerves off. So I prayed while I was out there. It felt awesome. I felt like I was really connected. So by that time, the sun was up, like I said. I knew it was getting closer to time. We still had a good bit of time before my time to actually start swimming. So I went back over to the swim start area where the parking lots were, where all the swimmers were getting ready. And I went and I actually found my coworkers. At this point, we still had a good bit of time, but we were kind of starting to need to get totally at least ready to go start walking. We weren't ready to start yet. We had a little bit of time before our actual jump in the water, but it was going to take a little bit of time for our group, our entire swim time group, to make it all the way down and make it across the road and then down to the swim start area. And there's a big line down there. So I met with my coworkers. We all met up. I was actually planning on swimming in the 40-minute estimated swim time. If I'm not mistaken, that was my initial thought, was 40 minutes. So I had originally planned on going with the 40-minute swim time group, which, if you're not aware, this race, it's a 70.3 total mileage, but for this, it was a half Ironman. It's a 1.2 mile swim. So my planned time was 40 minutes for the 1.2 mile swim. When I met up with my group, they were a little bit faster than me. They were planning on being at around 35. So we all decided, you know what, let's just go at the back of the 35-minute group. Then we should be about where we want to be, but we don't have to wait and then get caught up in the 40-minute group. So we all got into the 35-minute group, and we started to make our way down. So now at this point, I had 3 other coworkers that I was with, and that was also really great to have 3 people that were, these were all first-time Ironman racers, and all of this was new to them just as much as it was to me. So we were all fairly nervous, I guess, as a group, and so it was good to have each other kind of talk through that whole process. It took a while to get all the way down through the line, get our goggles and everything on, but once we got up closer to the water, you kind of your heart starts racing a little bit. So now we are close to Wrightsville Beach, or I'm sorry, we're close to the bay on Wrightsville Beach. We're kind of just trying to stay warm and stay limber, stretching your arms, stretching your shoulders and everything, just trying to stay as warm as you can, getting close to the water. They had it broken out into 4 people were starting at a time, so it was perfect. We decided that we were going to separate and all try to jump in the water at the exact same time, and it would be kind of a cool experience, which luckily we were able to do. We were able to split 4 wide, and they had 4 chutes that ran down in the water. So it was pretty cool. We all, as soon as our timer hit, it beeped, we all got to run into the water. One of my coworkers and I, we high-fived as we jumped into the water. It's silly. It seemed silly, but it was super, super awesome. So we jump into the water, and like I said, it was about 40 degrees that morning. The water, though, was actually really nice. It was around 69 degrees. And with a wetsuit, it was perfect. It was the water. I could not have asked for more perfect water conditions. So we get into the water and we make our way, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really, really good. We're in salt water and I'm in a wetsuit, so we're very buoyant. I'm floating on top of the water. The swim feels great. When we make it around, I might be able to show this. So we make it to right about here. So I'm feeling great all the way up to here, but I am noticing that the current for this race, this whole time is pushing me this way pretty strongly. Well, I didn't realize it, but me and a lot of other people, actually, I was kind of following a big group because there's a ton of people swimming, and we found ourselves pushed to the left of that first turn, and you have to go to the outside of that first turn buoy, and if you don't, then you could be DQ'd if anyone saw you do it, but either way, you're not doing the actual course if you don't go outside of that turn buoy. If you cut the corner, you'd be shortening your distance. So I had to, as soon as we got close to that, I was way, way inside of that turn buoy. So I actually had to turn and swim back upstream as hard as I possibly could. I full sprint swimmed. It was literally as hard and as fast as I could possibly swim up current just to get around that turn buoy. As soon as I made it around that turn buoy, I had to just completely stop and let the current take me for a second because I was exhausted. They say you have a certain amount of matches that you can burn in these races. You don't want to burn them all out. Oh, I burned one early because, like I said, I had to full sprint swim as fast as I could to get around that buoy. Once we got going down that straight, though, then it was finally with the current, and the current felt really good. Once I got my heart rate back down, I calmed myself down and I got back into my rhythm into swim, and the current was pushing, so I felt fast as well. Made it all the way then at that point with no issues. Once we got close to the very end, right to where you get out of the water, we started to bunch up a little bit because obviously people are slowing down and climbing up the little ladders onto the docks, but it wasn't too bad. They had a ton of little ladders to get up on, onto the docks and get rolling. So my estimated time, like I said, was 40 minutes on the swim was my estimated swim time. My actual time for the swim was 35 minutes and 13 seconds. So I ended up seating myself perfectly in the 35-minute group. I swam 5 minutes faster than I thought I was going to. So I was in the water at 7:55 a.m., out of the water at 8:30. I had originally estimated to be out of the water at 8:25. So I got pretty close to my estimated time for what I told my family. So as soon as I got out of the water, we had a pretty solid run. It was about around a quarter mile run. Around a quarter mile run from the place where you get out of the water to where your bike is. So I get out and I take my cap off, take my goggles off, take my earplugs out, and I'm running to over where the bikes are at, and we have our wetsuits on. They had this spot set up where they had kind of told us about this beforehand, where they had some of the college soccer teams were there to assist in wetsuit removal, which once again, if you've never done this, I had not at this point in time. If you've never done this, the wetsuits, when they're wet on your body, are very, very difficult to get off, especially alone. So they had a spot, this was maybe halfway in this quarter-mile run, where you could, all you had to do, they had mats laid down on the ground, and you would just lay down with your feet up, and they would rip the wetsuits off of you. And I'm so thankful for it, because there's no way that I would have ever gotten the wetsuit off if they weren't there. So I was able to just put my legs up, boom, they ripped it off, it was done, got up, threw my wetsuit over my shoulder, ran the rest of the way to the bike. Yeah, so I got to the bike, and I was feeling really good at this point. I hadn't really burnt too many. Like I said, I burnt that one match trying to get around that buoy. But other than that, I was feeling really good. I felt good, and I wasn't, I had kind of knocked the nerves off. You'd already started the race at this point, so it wasn't too bad. I had laid all my stuff out already that I needed, so I put my socks on. I dried off a little bit. I didn't have much to dry off, but I dried off a little bit. Put my equipment on, put my helmet on, got the bike ready to roll. Everything was going smooth. Put my cycling shoes on, and I made my way out of transition. So my transition one actually was super, super smooth. I put some extra Vaseline everywhere. I put it absolutely everywhere, including my lips, because it was still cold. At this point, out of the water, it was really, really cold. It was still probably 45 degrees at this point, maybe 50 tops. So coming out of the water, it was really chilly. So I put a bunch of Vaseline on my lips and my nose, because I really didn't want to deal with any kind of chapped lips during this race, and I knew I was about to be on the bike for a while. So I got on the bike at the end of transition one. My transition one took me 7 minutes and 59 seconds, which is fairly long. I know some people were pretty quick, but it was actually it was pretty good. I would have expected for it to have been longer, and that included the quarter-mile run from getting out of the water to the bike. So 7 minutes, 59 second total transition time. I was really satisfied with that. So I get on the bike at 8:38 a.m. and I start my ride. At this point, I was a few minutes behind my coworkers. They had finished the swim just a little bit before me, probably five-ish minutes before me. So I was a little bit behind them. So I get on the bike and I start riding. There was no real issues on the bike early on. I felt good getting out of the city. When you start pretty much in the center of Wilmington, or pretty close to it, and you ride a couple of weird spots to get around the city, and you're actually riding on the highway for the majority of the ride. But in this beginning part, you're riding on the highway and having to cross the highway, and they've got it all coned off, but it does still feel weird just riding on the actual highway on the bikes. And because I was the time frame that I'm in, the window of when I started, I am very slow in the swim for where I'm at, but I'm really fast on the bike in comparison. Not to say that I'm fast on the bike, because in no means am I fast on the bike, but in comparison of where I started the swim, I'm fast on the bike. I'm a lot faster than apparently everyone that swims the time that I swim, because I was passing a ton of people on the bike, and it was really difficult because I'm in the average group, so there's a ton of people, and it was really hard to pass because you've got to pass 5 people at a time if you want to keep your tempo up. And I think part of the reason that I had some issue halfway through the bike, I was having to pass big chunks of people at a time, and I knew that I was going to have to pass if I wanted to do okay, because my run is generally very slow, so I was expecting to be really slow on the run, so I wanted to make up as much time as I could on the bike, because it was my best of the 3. So I'm making it through the bike just fine. I get to about halfway. I think it was maybe a little over halfway, around that area, and I started to cramp, and this was a hamstring cramp. It was a cramp on my hamstring. I had never in my life had a cramp on my hamstring before. I actually almost wrecked the bike when it happened, because my hamstring locked up so bad that it straightened my leg, and I was riding the bike, and I locked my leg up, and it almost made me swerve off the side of the road. And at this point, I had been pacing with this other guy. There was this gentleman that I was pacing with. We were back and forth pretty much that first, all the way up until I had my hamstring locked up. And at this point, I was in front of him, and my hamstring locked up, and I had to kind of slow down, come to the side. And as he's passing me, he's like, "Hey, you all right?" I told him, "Yeah, I'm cramping real bad. Just go on." And so he took off and kept going. So at this point, I know I'm behind on electrolytes. I could tell because I was kind of feeling a little weird anyways, and I realized, oh man, I didn't bring enough electrolytes. So I had 2 bottles that I had probably already finished, and I'm more than halfway through. So I chugged this 3rd bottle, get as many electrolytes down as I can. I'm stretching my leg out on the bike, and it was getting a little better. I could still feel it occasionally. If I pedaled the wrong way, I could feel it start to tighten up again, and I would have to say, okay, let me slow down, let me just relax a little bit. So I had to take it easy again for a little bit. To make matters worse, there was a person that was cheering people on. The only reason I know this for a fact now is because I saw videos of it later. There was a person that was cheering people on with a megaphone on one of the bridges, and I had come off of one of these bridges, down on my aero bars, flying really, really fast, and she was just cheering people on with a megaphone, but I was so locked in, I heard it last second, I heard it, and I could have swore that she was essentially telling me that I was doing something wrong, and that I had just received a penalty for being in aero bars on a bridge. This, looking back on it, I don't know why I thought this, but I was just in a weird spot, and I'm already messed up with my leg and stuff, so I'm overthinking stuff. Shortly after that, I reached the penalty box, and I pull over, and I stop. I'm like, hey, I think I got a penalty. I'm still, once again, I'm just overthinking stuff, and I think I got a penalty. I explained the situation. He's like, we don't know. We don't have a list of people that got a penalty. All we can do is you can wait for the penalty time, and we can write your name down and say you waited. So I sat there for a full 2-minute penalty just in case, which once again, looking back, I have no idea why I thought that I got a penalty. But I waited. I waited a 2-minute penalty out. I stretched my leg out while I was there. He wrote my name down, made sure that just in case I was good to go, and I was back off to riding. At this point, I had killed my 3rd bottle, and I was coming down the back stretch, and we're headed back. This is a out and back loop. It's kind of like a lollipop where you come through, you go down around a big loop, and then you come back down the same way, just on the other side of the road. At this point, I'd already passed my coworkers, but then I hit the penalty box, and then while I waited for 2 minutes, they ended up passing me. So I caught back up to my coworkers, and I actually rode with one of them for a little while. We rode, obviously not super close together, but close enough to where we could kind of go back and forth and just talk about the race a little bit while we were riding. But other than that, so once I got closer towards the end, I found one of the aid stations, and I made sure to get another bottle of electrolytes in me. I think once again, I was way too late on electrolytes. I was way behind. I should have been having way more, way earlier. And at this point, my hamstring is really starting to tighten bad. It was not at a full cramp yet, but it was really starting to tighten again, and I could tell it was getting bad. Pushed all the way to the very end of the bike, and I feel my leg just before I get off the bike. I can feel it really, really tight, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to get caught up on electrolytes, or this is gonna be really bad. I'm thinking about it. I still have a half marathon to run, so I'm not looking forward to that. I think that things are probably not looking great. I'm kind of worried, actually. I'm getting kind of anxious because of how bad my leg, just the one leg, was hurting. And I'm like, oh man, I still have a half marathon to run, and I'm already cramping. So for the bike, my estimated total time was 3 hours and 15 minutes. I expected to be done with the bike in 3 hours and 15 minutes. And once again, if you're not familiar, this is a 56-mile bike. So my total time, now I'm proud of this because this included a little bit of leg cramp, and it also included me stopping and waiting in the penalty box. So I finished the bike in 3 hours and 4 minutes, and my estimated was 3 hours and 15. So I ended up running that a little bit faster than I was hoping, or than I was planning, I should say. I ran it faster than I was planning, which is great. I was really satisfied. I knew I felt reasonably quick. We had a pretty insane amount of headwind on the way out, but then the wind had shifted, so we didn't even get a full tailwind on the way back in. So I think with no wind, or at least if I had the tailwind on the way back in, I probably would have been another 10 minutes faster. Sorry, My phone died. So, got to the end of the bike, pedaled, crossed the line, and as soon as I crossed the line over with my bike, I unclipped and I stepped off, and both of my hamstrings immediately locked up. Absolutely just locked entirely up, and I could do nothing about it. I wasn't able to walk right then. Literally, like I said, both of my, and at this point, I had never in my life even had a single hamstring cramp before. I'd had some in my calf and some other muscles before, but I'd never had any in my hamstring, and it was a very different feeling when just one was earlier on the bike. So having both of them lock up to where I couldn't move my legs was a pretty wild experience. So I kind of hobble over to the side, and I start stretching them out. I get my hamstrings as loose as I can, and I hobble my way over to the transition where my running shoes and my running hat and everything are. At this point, I'm kind of freaking out because I'm like, hey, I have a half a marathon to run now, and I have both of my hamstrings cramping, and I haven't even started the half marathon. So at this point, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit, and I knew at this point I was way behind on electrolytes. I was way behind. I was starting to feel dehydrated, so I knew I hadn't had enough water either. I was way behind on electrolytes, which is really what was, I think, causing the really bad cramping. So I'm like, hey, I got to get caught up as soon as possible. There was an aid station approximately every mile, close to every mile along the whole 13.1 mile run. So I knew I needed to get electrolytes every single aid station. I need to get water every single aid station. So I get to my area, I hang my bike up, I get my shoes on. As I'm putting my shoes on, my legs lock entirely back up again where I couldn't move again. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I start stretching my legs out again, and I get them as loose as I possibly can, and I'm like, all right, I know no matter what, I've got to get electrolytes every single stop. As soon as I hit this first aid station, I've got to get as much salt in me as I can, which sucks because if I had just brought some electrolyte tabs or something, I would have probably been in better shape, but I didn't bring any. I didn't have any salt other than what I brought on the bike. I was expecting to use the aid stations, but I needed some now. So I took a goo. It had a little bit of sodium in it, not nearly enough. And I slowly make my way around the little area where we run and we start the race. And for that first mile until the first aid station, I would have to run and stop, and I'd stretch my legs out because they would start to lock up, and I'd have to run just a little bit. And I was running real weird too, because if I ran normally, they would lock up immediately. So I'm running really, really weird, and I'd have to stop and stretch my legs out, stretch my legs out. And I made it finally to the first aid station. It was about a mile in. I took a ton of the electrolyte. I drank a bunch of them, a ton, as much as I could put in my stomach. I was drinking a bunch of water too, just trying to fill myself with water and electrolyte, make sure that I was okay. Slowly start making my way. This entire first 3 miles, I am really, really, really just in a bad way. I'm taking as much electrolyte as I can and as much water as I can, and I am hobbling the whole way, having to stretch every 100 yards or so. I'm having to stop and stretch my hamstrings out again because my hamstrings were just locking up nonstop. Once I got to about 3 to 4 miles, maybe even closer to 5, between the 3 to 5, somewhere around there, my legs stopped cramping. I think I'd gotten just enough electrolyte in to where my legs weren't cramping anymore, but I was still really dehydrated. I could feel that I was still really dehydrated. So I was still drinking as much water as I could, and I'm still taking electrolytes in as much as I could. And thank goodness at this point, my legs had kind of stopped cramping for the most part. I was getting really hot now because it was starting to heat up outside. So I was throwing ice down my every aid station. I was throwing ice down my tri-suit, putting it on my chest, and that was helping a ton. That would keep my core temperature down. I was starting to feel decent at this point. From mile 4, like I said, between 3 and 5, somewhere in there, probably mile 4, up until about mile 7 or 8. Around 7 or 8, this was the point, or close to the turnaround for this out and back. Around 7 or 8, that was when I guess I went into a cave of sorts, a pain cave of sorts. I don't really remember much after that, up until towards the end. I blacked out. I want to say blacked out. I just don't really remember that much of it. I don't know if I was just really dehydrated and I was just not all there. Either way, I don't really remember mile 8-ish up to mile 12. I don't really remember any of that. But what I do remember is right around mile 12 is kind of when I start to remember, hey, I can remember this section, and I say, hey, I'm getting close. I've got like a mile left, and so I'm starting to get a little bit more excited. You know, you're almost done at this point. I've got just a mile left. I'm telling myself, even though my legs are starting to cramp again, I'm like, hey, I can do this now. I can crawl a mile if I need to. So I'm on the home stretch. I hit the last aid station. Once I got to probably a half to a quarter mile out from the finish line, and the finish line at this race is downtown, right beside the river, right across from the big battleship, and it was awesome. So I make probably a quarter to a half mile out. I'm like, all right, I'm there. Let me gas out. Let me just spend everything that I have left. And so I started running. I was able to run at this point. I had gotten a huge adrenaline rush. Obviously, you're getting close to the very end of the race. I got a huge adrenaline rush. I didn't feel bad at all at this point. I didn't feel dehydrated. I felt great. And so I'm running at this point. And at this point, because we're close to the finish line, there's a ton of people. So it feels really, it's a crazy feeling, because all this work that you put into is all culminated into this one point, and you've got a ton of people. None of them know you, but they're all cheering you on. And it's super, super cool. So you're coming through this area where a ton of people are at. Everyone's cheering you on. You're at this point. I was feeling great because I had adrenaline pumping through me, feeling great, running nice and fast. And you get down into the main chute where the red carpet starts. And at this point, I feel like I'm sprinting. I wasn't, but I felt like I was at a full sprint. It's super loud because the entire chute is just full of people. There's tons and tons of people. The huge red carpet with the gigantic sign over top. I'm trying to take it all in as much as I can. So I'm running through and I'm just taking it all in and cross the finish line and throw my arms up. And I was just so excited that I'd finally finished this. It was a pretty emotional time right then, just because I'd finished this thing that I'd set out to finish. This was one of the first big things that I said I'm going to do, and I went out and I did it. And so I was really excited. I made it past the finish line. And shortly after, I see where my family is, and they're all there, and they're cheering for me and smiling. So I get to see my family, and we all take pictures and hug and everything. And I was super excited with my time. At 6 hours and 36 minutes, I was ecstatic. Once the adrenaline kind of wore off, I started to realize, hey, I am not doing good. I was very dehydrated and very, very, very low on electrolytes. So tried to get as much of that in me as I could. Like I said, I was not doing good at that point. It was pretty rough. So I get in the truck, because we had driven down for the work trip earlier. So I make my way home, drive a couple hours home, and I'm, like I said, not doing super good. I get home and I'm finally able to shower and change out of my clothes. And so I shower and I feel a ton better just from that. I get changed, I finally get some good food, because I wasn't very hungry right after the race. And I get in bed and I go to sleep. And I slept until, I don't know, sometime in the morning, and I woke up and I felt like I had been hit by a semi-truck. My whole body was just obliterated. It was terrible. It was so bad. Yeah, it took me about a week. I actually had a flag football game that we do, an annual flag football game that I had to do about 2 weeks after. And I felt pretty good at that point. My body was pretty much back to normal. So it took about 2 weeks for me to be totally back to normal. Yeah, I was up to that point. It felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Overall, it was a super great experience. I was super happy with my time. I ended up 24 minutes under my goal, so I was super happy with that. Everything went reasonably smooth, all things considered. It could have been a whole lot worse. So yeah, the race itself was a good time. I learned a lot. I'm going to take a lot of that and then apply that to the Chattanooga Full Ironman this year, which I'm sure will be a whole different animal. Just exclusively for that race, yeah, it was a great time. I'm really glad that I did it. I think I'll do a video that kind of breaks down some of the things that I learned specifically. But as for just overall, yeah, it was a great time. I would recommend doing an Ironman for anybody that's interested. And please ask me questions if you have any. I've got tons of advice and tons of things that I learned, so please feel free to reach out. And yeah, that was my 2024 Wilmington Ironman 70.3 experience. So thanks for coming along. If you're still here, check out some of my other stuff. It's a little bit more vloggy. This is more story time. So if you're still here, that's awesome. Thank you. And yeah.